Welcome everybody to Service Drive Revolution. I'm Chris Collins and this is Christian Lafferty. Please say hello to Christian.
Hello everyone.
He's the humor behind all this.
Sometimes.
Today we have a guest for you. Our booking agent is incredible. Yeah. Mama Bear is her name. But our guest talks about recruiting from the military, and our fascination with it was, how do we figure out how to hire and recruit technicians from the military? And we've struggled with that. His business is based on training military vets on sales, which almost is harder in a sense. But the knowledge he shares with us is incredible, and you want to make sure that you have a pen and paper ready, because there's a point in the interview where he starts rattling off places you can go to find veterans.
I couldn't write fast enough.
No, and we've been looking in the wrong place.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you're gonna thoroughly enjoy his knowledge and expertise, and it's gonna inspire some great ideas. It also is the longest comedy drought in the history of SDR. Christian does not crack one joke through the whole thing. After I was like, Christian, what? Because I didn't want to interrupt him. It was so good. I'm like, that's exactly when you need to interrupt him. That's your shtick.
There was a little bit of a reverence.
The timing, the worse the timing is, the better and the funnier it is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
just think about him, like, he's talking about all this great stuff, and all of a sudden you come in with a toupee joke or something, and like,
right. That's true. Yeah, all that military talk did get me thinking about weaponry, though.
Did.
Yeah, for sure.
Funny.
Why are peppers so good at archery?
Wait, I know this one. Why?
Because they habanero.
That's terrible.
There's no way that guy would have continued the interview after that joke.
You think you would have just
he would have been like
clicked off?
Leave.
So so funny. It's great though. You guys are gonna love it. So let's get right to it. This is Raleigh Wilkins talking about how you can recruit from the military. Let's do it. Welcome to the big show, Raleigh. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Let me introduce you to Christian.
How are you?
Hey.
So we cannot wait to dig into your expertise and get coached a little bit here by you. But just kind of off the top, let's just tell our audience a little bit about what you do and how you got involved in it.
Yeah, well, I guess you can start that out by saying I was born at a young age, and no, we're not going to go that far back. So. Yeah, getting involved. So essentially what Sales Platoon is it's a 12-week to 6-month apprenticeship for active duty military so that they can learn how to make the transition off active duty and get into a career in sales. And so, it was based loosely upon the events in my own life, like a good TV movie. I came off active duty long time ago in a galaxy far away. No idea that I was going to go into a career in sales. I had sold Kirby vacuums door to door before that when I was on active duty. So I cut my teeth that way. And that's what I thought a career in sales was. So I wanted to be a maritime lawyer. I was going to do something that I could earn a lot of money. And it didn't work out. For a lot of reasons, one of which I'm not a very good student, but the other reason is that, I never heard of this thing called corporate revenue operations or sales. And it's been such a fascinating journey for me. That was a 20-year journey working my way up from sales rep to senior VP of sales at startups to NASDAQ. We sold 2 companies that I was a part of. And about 3 years ago, stepped away with the idea there is a need for highly trained early career sales talent and there's a 280,000 active duty military coming off every year. And the majority of them end up underemployed or not employed when they come off active duty. And we'll talk more about that hopefully as we get in here. So, as one of the service members said to me not long ago, thank you for your service rings kind of hollow when you stand in the unemployment line.
Yeah, for sure. And so, there's so many levels to what you're doing and intricacies. So at the top of it, if we could just look at it from the soldier's point of view coming out, what percentage of soldiers coming out have the desire and skill set to be good salespeople?
Yeah, I think it's a different way, if I can, to frame it, Chris, would be to say, think about what the opportunity is for them and where they're coming from. So when they come off active duty, a lot of the times what happens is you have a roadmap for your life that you spent 4, 8, 12, 20, 30 years developing in the military, but you're trying to navigate the streets of Paris with a map of Chicago.
Oh.
You are coming in with, there's 3 things that separate every armed service veteran from our civilian counterparts. Only 3, from the, Air Force admin through the Force Reconnaissance Marine. There's 3 things we all had in common, and we all sacrificed, but they are, 1, we all went to boot camp, some sort, some fashion, some way. 2, we all wore a uniform and had a rank. And 3, we're all subject to something called the UCMJ. And so the UCMJ, for the readers of your audience who haven't heard of that, it's a Uniform Code of Military Justice. So I'll go in reverse order. The UCMJ is a set of laws and customs that sits on top of the U.S. Constitution, where essentially every military member gives away half their rights and all their freedom voluntarily. They can't be where they want, do what they want, say what they want, dress like they want. They can go to jail, lose their pay, and be confined to their house for not showing up for work and for faking sick. I'm sure a lot of managers would love that. The UCMJ was inside, but that doesn't exist in the civilian world. The uniform, great. They learn attention to detail, drive, resiliency, right? They learn respect, which is oftentimes not taught in our culture today. And they know where they exist just by looking at somebody's rank, where they sit in the world's last organizational system in that. But when you take that rank off, I don't know who I am. And then the final thing is that they went through a boot camp, which is a transformative experience where they go through this experience, and it's like, you learn mission first, then the team, then me. And they're going into a world that's the exact opposite of that. Me first, then team, and then maybe the company. Who cares, And so when you say, like, who could fit in sales, the military member is a cross section of America. It's from its poorest areas through its richest families, from, every race, every, ethnicity, all sexual orientations are all part of our U.S. military, just like they're part of society. But to frame the conversation, we first have to get a common ground to say there is a difference when you're taking somebody from the military and going to hire them in your organization. It's not like you're just getting the skill set. I don't care if they're an auto mechanic and they've been in 20 years. It's going to be hard for them to assimilate to the culture when they come out. And the challenge in what you just said is that, and the reason I'm reframing, I apologize for going on, but the reframing it comes from nobody in the military has been taught to sell in the way that they think of it is sales. They've all been taught, they don't know it yet. But there is no job code in the military for raising money. There's no revenue, capital raise, no going public, no any of that. It's essentially what you end up doing is you're going through, you spend money, you don't make it. And so there is a good percentage that would be really good in sales, but they don't know that that exists as a career path. And on the other side, you have, companies and auto dealerships and all the people in the world that say, I'd love to hire them, but they don't know where to get them and how to train them. So does that track why it's a harder question to answer than just saying a percentage?
Totally. So then how do you approach the soldiers coming out? Like, what is your conversation? What is the picture you're painting for them?
Yeah. So the first picture that I paint for them is as somebody who's made the transition myself before they had all these entitlements and skill bridge and different. I'd say entitlements, meaning they have this thing called DoD skill bridge now, which is the last 6 months of their active duty. They can apply for and go to a company and learn a trade or craft. And then the military pay their salary and they learn the trade. Not entitlement, meaning they feel like they deserve something. But, when they're coming off, the two things that I do is, this is with any military, and I'm up on Veterati, which is a free resource for veterans. It's a coaching platform where you can just give your advice. And so I'm on there. And, I say two things. One, your credits don't transfer, right? Whatever you think you had and how cool you were at your last school, that's going to be a different school. You're coming from being a white collar corporate guy to going into a prison. You better learn the rules real quick or you're going to falter. Different rules, different standards, different everything. The other one is, far more than you think you know about the business world, but you don't have a Rosetta Stone to teach you. And so you need somebody that's walked both paths. It makes no more sense for a civilian to try to train somebody in the military when they first come out than it would to have a civilian train, a PE teacher train recruits at Parris Island for the Marine Corps.
Right.
It's like, or in the same, conversely, it's the other side of that is when they leave active duty, quite often it's military people, military organizations that are trying to teach them how to be civilians. It doesn't work.
Right.
And so reaching them is just, first of all, saying, hey, you've probably never even thought about sales as a career. And if you have, you're probably thinking about, the person that annoys you at 6 o'clock at night and calls you to sell you a timeshare, or, calling to upgrade your credit card, or, knocking on your door at 3 p.m. on a Saturday wanting to sell you a new roof. You're not thinking how important it is to the lifeblood of every organization, that it is truly sales is the infantry of the business world. You don't know it yet. And so we start from that. And that's a lot of my public service speaking to veterans. It's like, hey, a career in sales is not a dirty word. Like, sales is not a fallback for people that can't do something. It is as noble a profession as being an architect or an engineer or a mechanic. But most people don't know that. They think, oh, you'd have to go find people that are born salespeople. And then you just, no, it's not. This isn't Gary Vee. I'm not talking about 10X in your life with the Grant Cardone stuff. It's like, there is a drive and a science behind selling that if you don't sell something, and as you guys know in your industry, you don't make a lot of money on the car. You got to make money on the backside of that, on the financing deal, on the upgrades, on all the things they do in the back of the house and the service. So anyway, they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And so it's a big piece of it is just teaching them that there's a lot to be done, and that sales is really one of the world's last meritocracies. That, the sales is blind where it comes to most things. If you can produce revenue for a company, you're going to get promoted. You're going to make money. And then in a company, other than the CEO, the second most highly paid person is generally their top seller.
Yeah.
And they just don't know that.
So I don't know. I think maybe the most salespeople I've ever had working for me is like close to 50. And if you gave me the choice of somebody who was disciplined, consistent, paid attention, followed orders, versus a cowboy that, was not disciplined, worked when they wanted to, right? They'd get a big commission check and then take a month off, more emotional based. I would take the discipline, consistency that I can train over the emotional, inconsistent, hotshot cowboy any day of the week. And so that's what's really fascinating about what you're doing is for somebody running a business that requires good salespeople, your conversion of somebody from the military to that is a match made in heaven, but nobody thinks that. That wouldn't be the natural perception from either side, from the soldier or from the employer. So how hard because I have to imagine you have to educate the businesses as much as you're educating the soldier. You're selling both sides, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. And so essentially, a guy shared with me a book, not when I was first, I don't know, about a year into my business. And it was, I can't remember the name of it right now, but essentially it talks about multi-sided markets. And they don't make traditional marketing sense. And you're right. On one side, I've got, it's like he was a small town farm kid from Virginia and she was a supermodel from Italy. You knew he'd have one shot to make a good impression, Rosetta Stone, right? And it's like, the same thing. You got like all these companies are like, we can't find good people. And on the other side, you got 280,000 people a year coming off active duty. 53% are under the age of 25. 93% of them don't have a 4-year degree. Most of them, if they find a job, will have 3 to 5 jobs in their first 3 years out. And they're going to be underemployed in $10 to $12 an hour jobs. And that's where that line, thank you for your service, rings a little hollow when I'm sitting in the unemployment line because no one will give me a shot. And so there's a lot of training on both sides. From the military side, it was a huge risk for me to leave my job as an SVP of sales and go start a company and say, hey, I want to train people, but I'm not going to charge you. Veteran. I'm going to teach you 12 weeks to 6 months in apprenticeship, get you LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Connect and Sell, HubSpot, train you on all these things. And I'm going to make sure that happens. And then go to the company and say, hey, how's Susie Sorority and Frankie Fraternity doing? How successful are they coming out of that 4-year degree? Well, they're more successful than the person that doesn't because they've shown determination and drive and resiliency. And if they're going to go into career in sales, they probably have a desire and a drive to help companies make an impact. But have they really ever been gut checked? Do they really know what it's going to be like? And so you got these two sides that don't understand each other. And if you just hire somebody directly from the military into your sales role, it's like I was a foster kid, so I speak lovingly about this. But, when the families got me, they didn't know what they were getting. And it's like, you bring a wild dog into your home, it's sometimes going to take some training. When you're bringing somebody from the military, I'm not calling us wild dogs. I'm saying that we've been acclimatized to different norms and cultures than the civilian world. And there's a period of adjustment that both sides vastly underestimates.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's not just about, oh yeah, I'm going to take some Sandler training and Miller Hyman and just put a camouflage logo on it. Or here's our standard 4-week SDR boot camp. And we're just going to put a camouflage bumper sticker out there. And now we can train military. It's not that easy. It's an apprenticeship where they need to be doing it full time, 8 hours a day, every day of the week, under the guidance of somebody that's actually done it before. That's the same way they learned that's the same way I became a Marine. They didn't have some civilian contractor come in there and say, hey, Raleigh, I'm Joe Johnny. I've never been in the Marine Corps, but I'm a really good extreme athlete, so you should follow me on the open. No, they're like, I'm a Marine. You want to be what I am, do what I do. And then you learn how to do what you do by watching them do what they do. Isn't that the oldest form of learning? Yeah. So all these programs that either want to charge the veteran and repurpose, I kind of get really upset about. And then the other ones that are just like, oh, we gave them, that 1 week, set of videos and now they've been on the phone so they know how to sell. It's like, you've been in sales for a long time. You've managed people. There's no way in the world. You show up and say you have a sales training certificate. You might as well, I watch Full Metal Jacket. I'm ready to be a Marine Corps sniper because I'm really good at first person shooter games on my Nintendo. It's like, what? No.
Yeah. So how do the numbers break down? Like if you run, 10 people through, so you recruit 10 soldiers a year later, 2 years later, like how successful is it?
Yeah. So generally speaking, and now I'll back it up a little bit from there. So as we've grown the cohort sizes, the phenomena that has stayed with us is that we have attrition during that period of time. Now, every sales leader in the world knows you can be the best hiring manager in the world. And if you're 50-50, you're a rock star, right? On who because you do all the behavioral interviews. We use a system and different indexes and things so that we can do our best to find the fits, right? Analytical, deductive reasoners, driven, high degree of self, autonomy, but also conformist and want to follow. What we're looking for. And they say they want to do it. And we go through all the behavioral interviews and I still lose 10, 20% of each cohort. And they just go, you know what? This is way harder than I thought it was going to be. This is way different. There's much more project management, much more, follow up, follow through. This is not and you know what? Great. I'm glad you figured it out while you're part of our cohort, because you can go get another job before you leave active duty. When they get through our program, once they're gone, we only, like this next cohort we have coming up August 23rd, we got 100 and some, I think, applications for it. We're going to bring 15 people maybe in the program. And, we have to be highly selective about who we do, because they're going to represent, and I'll say it in this way. I haven't had anybody go to a company yet and then they get fired in the first 90 days or quit. It hasn't happened, because I've already done the first 90 days with them. I've had people that join the cohort that I think are going to be the best people we've ever had, and they wash out in the first 4 weeks. But after 12 weeks of doing the job, they know what it means to be in sales in a good company, and they have a good sense of the science behind it. Now they're ready to go out and perform. But, the reason I get so passionate, Chris, and I really appreciate you having me on the show, anytime I can talk about our veterans, we have that determination, the grit, the resiliency, the ability to overcome. Every person has already been vetted who's gone through our U.S. Armed Services that comes out with an honorable discharge. They have done their time. They have served their country. They have already been vetted. I think it's less than 20% of the U.S. population even qualifies for military service. So, you look at that piece. But what happens is I go to companies, to your point earlier, and I won't mention the company's name because it's a podcast, but I called the company up and I told them what we did. And, they were pretty excited about it. And they talked and met some of our cohort members. Well, then I went to the final purchaser, right? The person who's going to sign the check for, basically endorsing and sponsoring some of these guys to our program. And they said, oh, yeah, we tried hiring from a program just like yours, and we hired 6 people. And we had to fire 5 of them within the first 6 months. And what pissed me off about that wasn't that, they're wrong about us and we're not like that other company. It was, they didn't think that company didn't train military right how to sell. They thought military can't learn how to sell. We already tried to invest in $100,000. It didn't work. And so now every military candidate that puts their resume in, they go, nah, we tried that. No, you didn't. That would be like taking a kid who's like places first in track and field events in the decathlon and then handing him a rifle and putting him in Baghdad. Like, we wouldn't do that. They missed all the training. They missed the entire process of becoming a Marine. They have no idea how to even marksmanship or, just because it's the same thing, but they don't think that way, and it poisons the well. And that's the piece that, they don't have to get them from me. I mean, I can't possibly train 280,000 people if you're coming off active duty, or even a percentage of it. So if you're going to hire them, bring them in your organization, just realize you're going to have to teach them some things. Just if you're trying to think about what they need to learn, think about what you need to learn tomorrow, Chris. If you showed up at Okinawa, Japan at 1st Marine Air Force, or 1st Marine Air Wing, and your job is to execute that day on exactly what you do, what would you need to know? Where's chow? What's the vacation? When do I get paid? They don't know. And so just keep in mind that if you do that, you're going to create military veterans talk. We talk to each other. We talk to other vets coming out. It is a tight community, and it's word of mouth. And they'll hear, oh, wow, so-and-so dealership hires military veterans, and they give them a really good training when they come on board. You should go there because you can earn this amount of money there. They'll start to talk about it. You won't have to try to get military veterans. But most recruiters, they're not trained in how to look at a military resume. So they wouldn't even know how to do it when they get it,
So just to in your experience and kind of speaking to that, there's a side of the automotive industry that I think now the stats are we're losing 5 technicians 5 to 1. So 5 technicians, they're leaving the industry or retiring or getting promoted out of the shop. But even the younger kids coming in, the industry's doing such a bad job of retaining them that there's over a 50% attrition that the first 2 years they leave even after they've gone to a vocational school and learned how to be a tech. And so we have tried to recruit military, and the thing that happens is they they're in such high demand that you really can't even get a call back. And a lot of them opt to go into aviation. They opt to go into there's other industries that are just better at recruiting the soldiers that have a kinesthetic aptitude and they want to be, techs, or they want to work with their hands. We lose them more to other industries, especially aviation. How would you approach that, or what is the I don't know if there's a magic pill, but what is the steps that need to happen in order to tap that market where we would pay for their school, we would provide them with a really good job and income and security, but they don't seem to be available, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know if you buy a new car, right, Chris? Say you buy a new, Ford Mustang, right? You get it tricked out like I did, and you get whatever you get, okay? And you got it. You never know that you need to go drive it for the first time out on the highway. You know how many of those cars you're going to see? Like a bunch of them, because it's like, you're like, I didn't even know there's so many cars. I thought no one had a car like this, and everybody's got a car like that. We have it's essentially, we have unconscious bias. Everybody has it. I have it. You have it. Everybody has it. We don't talk about it a lot as it pertains to our U.S. military, but there's a lot of unconscious bias out there that's limiting them from being able to hire. And I'm going to give you a solution to your problem. And it isn't as hard as you think. And I think I know what it means for somebody to be in the military because they were in the military. You don't know what it was like. You don't know what it was like, again, from the person that was in an admin role who never saw combat, who, traveled around and was at 3 different duty stations and got out. They still sacrificed for all the reasons that I just mentioned. They gave up their rights. They gave up their freedom. They would have gone to war if the country had asked them to, and they wouldn't have had a choice because they turned that over, right? That's what we mean when we say thanks for your service. Thanks for the sacrifice you gave up, your period of time that you took away from all the rights that you actually defend, and that you're going to go back. And, one of my favorite, I was a combat journalist, and one of my favorite photos of all time is of a National Guardsman, and they're surrounding a guy who's burning the American flag during the Vietnam War. And I say the difference between our country and a non-free country is the direction those weapons are pointed. Because those weapons were pointed towards the crowd to protect his right to desecrate the thing that they were defending. In a communist country, those have been pointed towards that person who's burning the flag. So when you're saying thanks for your service, that's it. But when we look at it, again, I said they don't know how to look at military resumes. I don't mean that they don't know how to learn. They can't learn to read and write and look and see what's on the resume and find mechanic and people with kinesthetic ability. But they're not thinking about that every person that comes out of the military went through boot camp. Every one of them, especially Marines, had first aid training, combat training, leadership training. They have learned how to use the M249 Golf, the M16A2 service rifle. They've learned how to be good with their hands, to tie knots, to rappel. Just because they don't have mechanic on their resume doesn't mean they can't learn it. And a lot of those people that are coming off active duty, 75% of them don't have jobs that align to the civilian world. So you got an infantry guy who's coming off active duty after 4 years. He's not thinking about a career in mechanics any more than I was, a career in sales when I didn't know. My lens before I went in the military was I was a foster care kid who worked his way through 3 years of college, who was a bartender and a waiter. I didn't know anything about corporate America. And if I'd had somebody that got a hold of me with a tool set and taught me trade, I could have learned. I love working with my hands. I love building things. But again, no one looked at me and thought, oh, Marine combat journalist, I'm going to, that's the guy I'm going to put in my mechanic shop. Because they don't know. They don't think outside the box. And you know how we are this day and age. Everything's AI. AI is going to take over the world. I'm telling you, if you're using AI to scan your resumes and you're looking for words, you're passing over a tremendous resource in our U.S. military. And what I would say is take those keyword searches and look for only 6 words. Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Air Force, and Space Force. If they pop up on the resume, they immediately get pulled over to a hiring manager so they can look at that resume and see. Because otherwise, they don't even make it through the application process because they go into some daggone computer system somewhere. So again, it's not as complicated as people make it, but you have to give the human thing to say, what is this person's story? Who is this individual? And even though they don't have it right now, I bet they have the aptitude to learn it. And that's what I tell these guys. You say, what do I teach them? I say, look, no one's going to hire you in a sales role because you have a proven, demonstrated ability to sell. Our 12-week course, a 6-month apprenticeship, a 1 year, you're still learning. You're going to be learning sales for years. They're hiring you because you have the ability to learn how to do the job. And that's the piece they got to keep in mind. And so that's the bridge, I think, is, again, I think lack of passion is one of my problems, Chris. So I'll try to taper it up a little. Hopefully I'm not too loud for you. Hopefully you hear me.
You need to turn it up a little bit, Raleigh. Your passion's not coming through.
Kind of flat. Yeah. But does that track, Chris, on, how you go?
You got to help me a little bit more in the sense that how do you get to those soldiers coming out? Because they're not all putting resumes online. How do you get to them?
No, there's a couple of ways you can go about it. So you can work through, there's an organization called Hiring Our Heroes. There's, what was the one the other day I came across? There's Wounded Warrior Project. There's Wounded Warrior, which is different from Wounded Warrior Project. All the special forces, each one of them their different, programs. There's the Honor Foundation. There's a lot, USO, Pathfinders program. These are all programs that are designed to help military members make a transition.
Have we tried all those?
No, but we should.
Yeah. I just know we've tried a couple, and we have clients in Virginia right by some bases, and we haven't been successful. So that helps. That helps a lot.
Yeah, Virginia's got the largest naval amphibious base in the world there in Norfolk and Little Creek and all those. Plus they got Yorktown, an Army base. The way you want to go there is you go through the local workforce boards. So in Virginia, it's Virginia Career Works. In Chicago, it's IDES. And they're going to have all of these different programs where they are going to work with the bases to get information about companies like yours to let them know. And if you want an example of like a 2-pager or a 1-page flyer, I put one together on Sales Platoon. Feel free to rip it off, take it, put the auto stuff in there, use it. It's essential. It's on our site. You can just click on it. It's a free download. It's not like, but it's, essentially it says like, hey, sales is the infantry of the business world. You're probably not thinking about a career in sales. And then I give them the pitch on what it is and how to get in contact. You have to earn the trust of these TAP officers and these placement officers and the Virginia Career Works and the IDS. But once you do that as an ethical, above board person, you can get those candidates to you. Those TAP officers are the ones that those E3 to E5, the Lance Corporal to the Sergeant, the 25-year-old is coming off active duty, 24-year-old, 22-year-old, and they didn't plan. They're 90 days out and they got 60 days of vacation saved up. And they're like, they go to that TAP officer and go, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to go home to my parents. And, no, wait, have you ever thought about being a diesel mechanic? You ever thought about being an auto? No, I never thought about that. Oh, well, you can make a really good living, most people like to wear a tie and they'll work for $40,000 a year. You can put on overalls and you're going to make a lot more than that, and so it's, that's just, they don't know because they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And that's where the education piece is. If you go to one of these people and you say, hey, I want to hire your people because I want to, you're missing the fundamentals of sales. What's in it for them? Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Nobody buys what a product does. They buy what the product does for them, right? That's fundamentals of sales. Same thing when you're pitching the basis. Everybody in the world saying, we want to hire your military. You know who they want to hire? The junior military officer with an MBA who went to West Point.
Right.
They're not interested in the E3 and having to retrain them. You guys are. And that's where you can really make an impact and change people's lives. Not everybody's going to be a salesperson. Not everybody's going to be a whatever they did in the MLS job. Not everybody's going to come out and be a police officer. Some of us are going to be mechanics, but they don't know it exists. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know how much you could make. I might have gone into the construction trades. I mean, geez, I got friends now and I'm like, I got a friend who was a former FBI guy. He's a Chicago police officer and he's also got his MBA and he's a welder because he's like, I make so much more money and have so much more freedom being a welder than I ever would being in corporate America and dealing with those push button people, And it was like, and I was like, I love his story, and it's like, But how many people would, even know that that exists as a way of life? I think it's a dying breed, as you're talking about. And so you got to teach them, you got to educate them. You got to start by teaching them, hey, this is what a career could look like for you. Don't worry about them going to your company. They'll come to your company if you teach them. And in the word to the wise, military doesn't hang out on LinkedIn. They hang out on Facebook. They hang out in groups. They hang out they're not on LinkedIn. It's not something that we're taught to use or how to use. And we don't do resumes. It's word of mouth. So if that helps, and again, I had to learn all this myself. I mean, I knew how to be in the military, but I didn't know how to recruit military. It wasn't like I had some secret database somewhere.
Yeah. Have you placed salespeople in dealerships?
We have not. We haven't placed them in dealerships yet because we've been mostly focused on B2B sales.
Okay.
Only because that was my background. I sold vacuums door to door. My clients include everything from roofing companies to dealerships in training, because sales is sales is sales is sales. The difference is in the B2B world, generally speaking, I'm trying to scale this to have 2,500 veterans a year go through it. And the fastest way for me to be able to do that is get sponsors like Johnson & Johnson, Adobe, Oracle that hire hundreds of people a year. And they say, hey, yeah, we're willing to write a check to fund these guys because we know we're going to get world-class talent. Dealerships are a little harder.
Yeah.
They're more small 2 to 3 person shops and, maybe 5, 6 sellers. They have 1 or 2 needs a year. It's not that they wouldn't do great there. And as a matter of fact, I get people that come through that I'm like, you shouldn't be in B2B sales, but I think you should be in B2C. You do really well selling solar panels or cars or, warranties or what. They do better than being in that layered hierarchy of NASDAQ sales like I was a part of.
Yeah, there's 2 clients we have that I think that you could help. One is Lithia, and they own a ton of dealerships, and by a ton I mean in the hundreds, and they're growing fast. And we can make a connection there for you. And they're just great people. They run a really good business. They, if something makes sense, it makes sense. They're not,
they have no preconceptions. They're all about what works.
And then Penske might be one too. Have you done anything for Penske?
I haven't yet. We've had a lot of conversations since we started with a bunch of different companies, including, Cargill and, world's largest private employer. And they're interested. Sometimes when they get too big, it's almost you have to unlearn them on what they think they know so they can relearn again. They're like, oh, we have a training program. I'm like, okay, what's your attrition rate? How many people there after 2 years? What'd you do? So there's a little bit of education on their side too. It's like, we're not just, again, and no disrespect. I love these training methodologies. I'm not some retired Sandler rep that the last thing I sold was Sandler sales training. It's like, we're training people how to sell and it works. I mean, in military guys, they do so well, and one of my buddies, he started a company when he was young. He had a hammer and a saw and a little toolbox, and he went door to door and was doing just little upgrades for people. And he found out there was a whole group of people in the world that don't like doing that little stuff. And there's a whole lot of guys that like to do that stuff that have a lot of downtime because they suck at marketing. And he put them together and built a $50 million business. And his best salespeople are guys he gets from the military.
Yeah. Because
they're not afraid. They're going to go, and it's just a conversation. You're going to, the guys, it's B2C is so much easier than B2B sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, we'll try to make that introduction because it's a huge opportunity and it's something that, we would invest in, and it solves a problem on both sides. And I don't, you can make really good money being a technician. Just like a welder or any of those sort of vocations are harder and harder to fill.
Yeah, I'd love to explore that further with you, just from the passion that I have around this is, shoemaker stick to thy last. I have to stay very focused with Sales Platoon. This is all my money. This is all my investment. I've put my heart and soul into this thing because I believe in it and I want to give back. And I think that there's also a really good business here. But I need partnerships like the ones with you guys that just say like, hey, they come here and they interview with us. And I go, you know what? You're probably not going to be a good fit for sales. Here's why. You could still do it, but have you thought about working with your hands? You should maybe interview with these guys. They have a different program to be able to get those off ramps for these guys because you get one shot. You know, they might be 60 days before they leave active duty. And if they don't end up with a job somewhere, they're going to become a statistic.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, it's not just about getting a job. It's about when you leave active duty, you lose your sense of identity. And I need to identify with something else. There's a reason that the Hells Angels started from Vietnam veterans who got out, right? I think that's how they started, you know, and it was because they had a cause and they needed that assimilation, and it created this organization that is, you can do that in a positive way with your company. You know, you really are transforming young lives. I mean, I was a 20-year-old punk that was my grandmother said to me, it was the Marine Corps of the monastery. And she's pretty sure the damn priest didn't want me, you know, and they transformed me into a better man and gave me a sense of purpose. But sales transformed my life and my family's life generationally in a single generation. I went from the ability to be, you know, the son of a single mother, a father that had committed suicide, you know, a guy that was in and out of different homes, to be able to go to be somebody that, you know, in one generation, I can create a life for my family and help other people and give back and have the money to do that. That's what sales gave me the ability to do. But it was through good people like you who took the time to give a little punk like me a little pat on the back, a little word of encouragement, an opportunity for training to help me come along. And so how do I not do that for somebody coming behind me? Yeah. So when I meet somebody like you that wants to help, yeah, absolutely. I'll take an hour and talk, you know, it's, you know, it's so important.
Well, I think too, the thing you said there is the identity is a big part of what we're talking about. Is your identity, especially as a male, is so connected to your career. And when you don't have one and you're lost, it just compounds.
Yeah, there's nothing sadder than a retired colonel or sergeant major wandering around the PX, just looking lost.
Yeah, with all that talent and potential.
Yeah, and the younger generation, it's the same thing. Like, you know, you think about what the average 19-year-old working in a dealership you would trust them with. Probably not even changing the paper in the copy machine. But there's 19-year-old Marines that are deployed right now that they are responsible for people's lives, millions of dollars worth of equipment in combat situations that you can't imagine the pressure worldwide on them, basically being an ambassador for the United States at 19.
Yeah.
Who would you rather have working on your car? Susie Sorority, who flunked out of junior college, or, you know,
Susie Sorority, that's funny.
You know, who comes out of the Marine Corps. So
it was funny on a flight, you know, years ago. They, I forget, it must have been American Airlines, which is a disaster now, but they upgraded a military kid that was young. He was like 21, I think, to sit next to me in first class. And so I'm talking to him, and he's telling me what he does and the guns he shoots and the vehicles he's driving and all that. And I asked him, like, I was like, you know, is that scared? Thinking that he, you know, would have remorse or whatever. And he's like, I love it. Like, he went into this whole thing about how it's the greatest thing ever. I get to shoot the best guns. And like, and he, you know, just come from combat. So you can't appreciate the courage and bravery and discipline and skill that these soldiers have coming out until you talk to them. But they you know, our military does a really good job of brainwashing. I mean, that's really what boot camp is brainwashing. You starve them, sleep deprive them, make them swim in cold water, and then rewire their brains and undo all the bad parenting. Because really, you're undoing 18 years of bad parenting to create a soldier, because you have to, right? You can't have a guy out on the front lines going, I don't want to carry that, or I got, you know, whatever the cream puffs would say. So you know, you can't respect enough what these kids come out, their mindset, and just the potential, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been vetted in a way. There's very few rites of passage left in our society in America. And this is for our military veterans, the women and men who have gone through the boot camp, even if it's 4 years and they get out, or even if it's a reservist. they've already been vetted. They've already gone through that transformative experience. Nobody, when I was in Marine Corps boot camp, it was the same time that Buster Douglas was a big heavyweight fighter. And he tried to go through Marine Corps boot camp, couldn't hack it.
Yeah.
Not because he's not a good athlete.
No.
Because he couldn't unlearn mentally that he's not important, the mission is important.
Yeah.
That other people's welfare, if they don't survive, we don't survive. So we need to survive. And the whole reason that the Marine Corps works, and again, I speak about the Marine Corps, so I was a part of, is when we go into a room to clear it, I'm not looking over my left shoulder to go see what's going on because I know you've been trained and you're covering my six.
Right.
And what's that like if you had employees like that show up and they know their role and they know what they're, it's not that they're automatons. They're not just sitting there just like, okay, I'll run into, they're not lemmings going off a cliff, but they're thinking about something before they do it. And they realize that they're part of a bigger whole and that they're a small part in the machine, but they want to do what they can to help that machine move. I mean, I would take 100 employees like that.
Yeah. And there's also a lack of appreciation for the attention to detail you develop in those situations when it's life and death. Like, you know how to pack a parachute, you know how to a big part of success is preparation and mindset, and that carries over to the business world. Because that attention to detail a lot of times is that extra 20-25% of revenue that we get from the extra follow-up, from following a plan, from just doing the boring stuff that, you know, a lot of people don't want to do. I mean, it's in sales too, right? It's just following up and following some sort of system will get you more sales than being a cowboy.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I mean, I was talking to one of our cohort members today, and she and I were talking about, you know, sales, and there's really 3 ways to be successful. And you can be a product expert. So you really understand the product. You're the only person that knows about synthetic DNA synthesis, and you can sell to other nerd scientists like you. So you couldn't sell anything but that, but you can sell it. You can be a person who is good at relationships, developing relationships, building relationships, and people buy because they trust you and through you. And then there's the third one, which is the scientific salesperson who treats sales as if it's a science, that it's not about just make 100 calls, but there is a science behind who am I targeting and how do I help them get where they want to go. There's a pattern. It's like being a salesperson. It's like being part psychologist, part, you know, project manager, part, you know, actor, and, you know, and part, you know, business owner, all inside one role. And you just happen to have a product. And what I always tell them is, like, the difference between a consultant and a salesperson is nobody likes consultants. Because consultants show up and say, here's the problem, that'll be $250,000. Go figure it out yourself. Now implement it. Salesperson for no money goes there and helps you find it. They help you to figure out what you need to do, help navigate you towards what you want. They're a doctor doing a diagnosis, not somebody just writing prescriptions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Raleigh. It was a fascinating conversation, and, you know, just so great to talk to somebody who has such a passion and for a worthy cause, you know. Think about that, and we'll follow up too on the technician side, but we can do an intro to the head of hiring at Lithia for you, and if anything, you know, it'll be a contact.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Lithia and Penske, you know, those would be really good. And, you know, we'll set up a time to follow up and talk through whatever I can do to help your company, and we'll go impact some lives together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Service Job Revolution. We're uploading new stuff every day, so make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show, call 8333-ASK-SDR and we'll answer your question on the show. That's 8333-ASK-SDR. For special deals on our books and training, head over to offers.chriscollinsinc.com. Now that's offers.chriscollinsinc.com. I'm Chris Collins, and I'll see you in the next video.